Product documentation might not be the sexiest part of B2B sales content, but it is one of the most important. And it's the underlying proof that your product or service isn't just some flashy demo, but that it actually works. It's supportable, and there's a clear path for customers to help themselves when they run into questions. A good documentation signals maturity and care for the end user. It shows that your company isn't just figuring things out as they go, but that you've invested the time to think through how real users experience your product. Now, when your documentation is comprehensive and well organized and up to date, it communicates something bigger than just, here's how to use our product. It tells your prospects that you actually give a crap about their long-term success, and that's super important. This matters because buying decisions, especially in B2B, aren't only about features or price. They're actually about confidence. A prospect weighing whether to sign that six-figure contract is asking themselves, will we be able to make this work after the sales team steps away? If you can hand them robust product documentation during the sales process, you're answering that question before it's even asked. For example, when I was running global dev and support teams for a large corporation, I needed to assure my business leaders that my team in Sri Lanka could take care of the same problems as my teams in the US, because we had solid documentation that both teams could follow. Each team followed the same steps for problem identification and resolution. And this is what B2B buyers want from your product, because they don't want to be awakened at 2 a.m. when your system goes down. Now, high quality documentation also reduces the risk perception for your buyer. So in their mind, bad or missing documentation often means a post-sale support nightmare. They imagine weeks of waiting for ticket responses and long back and forth emails, all this wasted time on calls to troubleshoot. In contrast, when they see that you have a searchable, intuitive, clearly written knowledge base or a user guide, they know they won't be left stranded. That sense of self-sufficiency is a huge selling point, even if your prospect doesn't consciously articulate it. So from a sales enablement standpoint, having your product documentation in the mix can accelerate your deals. It can be a sort of silent closer. For example, if a technical stakeholder is like on your prospect side with questions about integrations, security, or edge case functionality, you can just send them the exact section from your documentation. And this saves your sales engineer from this long custom walkthrough, and it shortens the time from question to answer. In fact, I'd say even if you're doing just 5-figure deals, solid product documentation is just table stakes. If you don't have it, there's a good chance your competitors might win a deal because of that. You know, they might edge you out because their documentation is good and you don't have it. Good documentation has a few consistent qualities. It's organized in a way that mirrors the user's journey, so the way that they use it, from onboarding to advanced use cases. It's written in plain language that doesn't require deep insider knowledge to interpret. It's searchable, whether in a web-based portal or a well-indexed PDF. And it's kept current. Outdated documentation can be worse than none at all because it can erode trust, especially if it's a major version change and something that you said was in the user interface is not actually there. Then suddenly they're questioning whether any of your documentation is accurate. It's also worth considering that your product documentation is often the first post-sale experience that your prospect gets, even before they've signed the contract in some cases. Just sending them a link to your public-facing knowledge base or your user guide is a way of saying, hey, this is how we treat our customers. And if you've got clear, helpful, and thoughtfully designed documentation, that impression makes a big difference. Internally, documentation discipline is a reflection of operational discipline. If your company can maintain accurate, well-structured product docs, it's a sign that you likely have similar rigor in your support processes, your release cycles, and your QA standards. Your prospects may not see all of that directly, but they can feel it through the quality of your content. Like when I was running dev teams, I had to train them that their documentation was more than a support cost. It also demonstrated how well they understood the product and the end user and the problems that people are trying to solve. We don't just make software for no reason. People pay for it for a reason. And you need to understand that when you're delivering a product to market. So in the end, product documentation is a tool for B2B sales, whether you think about it or not. It builds trust, lowers perceived risk, and demonstrates that you've thought about the customer experience from start to finish. And when you can put that kind of a proof in front of a buyer, you're selling them on what your product can do today, and you're giving them confidence in what you'll be able to do for them tomorrow. Now, if you haven't reviewed your documentation lately, and I don't blame you, now is the time. There is never a better time than right now to make sure your docs are in order. Make sure it's part of your sales content library, ready to send when the moment calls for it. Make sure you know the documentation. You know where to find the information that a prospect needs. So you can just go, oh yeah, I'll get that right away to you. Your future customers will thank you, and your sales cycle will likely be shorter because of it. So let's say you're near the end of your sales cycle and your prospect is nearly convinced. They want to buy from you, they think. They've seen all of your sales content, they trust your claims, and your product documentation proves you will support them after the sale. They're ready to buy, but right before they pull out the credit card or sign that contract, they perform that one last gut check. Like, is this really the best option out there? And this is when they start having a look at your competition, if they haven't already. You can control that narrative with competitive analysis, and we're going to talk about that in the next video.